we constantly are talking about um, making sure that we keep our existing donors because we know it is a lot less expensive to retain our donors than it is to acquire new ones. However, we have to expand our donor bases to grow in the future, and we have to make sure that we're putting certain policies and procedures in place and utilizing strategies that can help us expand our donor base. But the two go hand in hand a lot more than we might actually think, right? If we're trying to retain donors, a lot of the tips and tools we want to talk about today are also going to be valuable. But hopefully, if you're looking at this through the lens of how we can expand our donor base in a really meaningful way, that we'll talk through a few tips here, Jake and I will, and then we're going to open it up to some discussion for you all about what has worked well for you. So next slide, please, Trish. First, I wanted to, and this is actually really ties into what Jared was just talking about that trust, right? If we are establishing, demonstrating impact, transparency, and accountability to our existing donors and to the communities that we serve at large, they're going to trust us more and be a lot more open to hearing from us when we're reaching out to new demographics of people. So focusing on things like storytelling to show what the contributions are doing to make a real impact and how support is making a difference is something that we absolutely need to be consistently raising our game on, right? We know that people relate in story, and we've got to do a good job of telling our story, both to our existing donors and to those potential new donors that might exist out there. We've got to ensure that transparency in our organization's financial and operational practices. We've got to make sure that people trust that if they give to our cause, that we're going to do what we said we were going to do with their money, right? If they want to give to a specific opportunity, we've got to show impact. So we've got to make sure that we have transparency, and having those things don't just happen, right? We've got to have regular communications, sharing updates on our projects, things like newsletters, social media, email updates, having opportunities to engage and discuss in person, having conversations with our constituencies. All of those things in a personalized way truly can help demonstrate to people that that's an organization I might consider being open to getting involved with. So first and foremost, want to make sure that we're demonstrating impact, transparency, and accountability, not only to our existing donors, but also to those prospective donors out there. Next slide, please. You hear us talk a lot about diversifying the opportunities for fundraising through our existing volunteer teams fundraising model that we really work to support all of our clients with. We know that if we are able to establish teams at all different giving levels, annual gifts, business, special, signature, planned, employee, all of those things, if we have teams that are specialized and focused in different types of giving and different giving levels, that we're going to engage almost anyone who might be interested in getting involved with us. So that's a very good way to establish that diversified portfolio we like to talk about. But we've also got to look at the networking opportunities that we do, because sometimes we can get very homogenous within our organization. So we've got to explore opportunities to engage new people with our mission, right? Looking at new communities with potential giving capacities, whether we're considering geographic locations within our service areas, different demographics, different generations. We did a session on generational giving and generational communication at our recent PDI event. And, I think that there's a lot of opportunities to look at different age demographics as we're looking to expand our donor base, right? We've got to consider online platforms and social media. Does this mean we should spend all day, every day on social media? No, but we've got to consider those ways to connect with people, especially in certain different generations, right? Because that is how we consume information. That is how we relate. And if we are completely radio silent on social media, we're missing an opportunity to connect with that demographic of people. And then we have to participate in networking events. If we are not out there talking with people who might be interested in our mission and vision, and getting involved philanthropically in other areas of our community, we're missing out, right? If there's a networking event that checks the boxes on the constituencies that may be interested in your organization, you should have a seat at the table there. You should be involved with that. So you should be looking at things like your Chamber of Commerce, other nonprofits in your area, all of those types of things, to make sure that you are engaging with people in meaningful ways who may have an opportunity to get involved with your organization. And so, diversification not only expands your reach, but it also caters to those different donor preferences and giving capacities, right? We know there's not a one size fits all approach. And we know that our volunteer model really does a great job of helping us connect at all of those different levels. But we've got to be intentional and strategic about our diversification as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jake to talk through a couple more tidbits before we get into the discussion.
Sounds great. Number 3 is focusing on engagement and relationships with donors as if they are already donors. We tend to do a great job of kind of stewarding and treating people like we're thanking them and we're inviting them to do stuff. But in terms of the actual relationship building, that can start on either side of a gift. The type of interaction that you have both before and after making an ask, but before and after getting a gift, should be relatively identical. Whether we call that stewardship or we call it cultivation, and whether the intention is to get a first gift or to build a habit of giving, it's kind of the same behavior. So we just need to kind of treat it in that way. So the first is obviously because you can't connect with every single donor to your organization in a one-on-one meaningful way every single week or every single month, really being reliant on your fundraising volunteers to also help make those connections with people that they already know. Not that you won't carry your own portfolio, and you should, but we have this vast network of people helping us in our volunteer fundraising organization, and they're not just the ones making the asks. It's up to them to do a little bit of the lifting on in terms of the engagement, the cultivation, the relationship building. We know that development staff turnover is also an issue. So say you are the development staff person, you spend all of this time, all these years creating all these meaningful relationships, and then you and your family move out of state. You don't want that nonprofit to completely fall apart in their fundraising program because they had a relationship just with you. So building it with your team as an overall organization, as lots of different people with your board members, really, really important because it helps just retain people and strengthens that kind of permanent connection to the mission. So not that they don't and should have a relationship with you as the development professional, but you want them to feel like they have a relationship with the mission, the organization, and everybody kind of involved. The second is do your best to utilize those research and segmentation tools that you have at your disposal. A lot of us have these built in our CRMs or have paid services that we can access by doing this to see what potential donors align with your actual mission and values. This is not a sales business. We're not just trying to capture everybody who could possibly give. Everyone who can give in our community, if they all just gave $1, usually we'd be done with our whole campaigns. Not the case for most people. We really have to identify those who are already kind of excited about the thing that we do. Like we do something for the world, and there are people who are passionate about that thing as well. So it's really just finding those people. So really trying to segment someone who's a lot more excited about your mission and will give and participate consistently is worth so much more than trying to get 10 people to give a one-time gift. We work so hard to optimize these appeals that we have in online giving, whether we're a mailer, like how do we do the best year in appeal? We get this question constantly. The best year in appeal is something that's very personalized to someone who's already in a relationship in some way with your organization, because you know you're going to get a high percentage. And trying to go mass marketing you got a numbers game, get as many as possible and get a 0.5% back is fine as a capture strategy. But if you're trying to grow your donor base, everything we're talking today is about growing your donor base, as in getting these people kind of permanently involved in your mission and in your organization. You want to find people who already have an affinity for the things that you're doing. And you can use that a lot of different ways. You can go through the wealth screening tools. You can go through donor relationships, saying, who else should we get involved? You've been so generous with our organization. Who can you introduce us to who also is passionate about this? You can go through your volunteers, go through your board. But, we always rate people on ability, affinity, and access. Those all are kind of weighted equally. How likely is someone to give should be just as important is how much money do we feel like they have to give? That's not necessarily the best indicator. Our wealthiest constituents, our wealthiest community members are not always the most generous. And even if they are, they may not be specifically aligned with our mission. So our job is to kind of connect those dots. Personalizing communication. Again, if you're going to spend time with any kind of outreach effort, whether that be over the phone, in person, or you're just sending out mailings, doing less mailings, less volume, and making them more personalized is going to yield both better quality and quantity of both relations and gifts. We want to be very, very careful that if we send out 2,000 letters and they're not personalized, that is worth less than sending out 200 letters that are highly personalized. And maybe those two tasks take an approximate amount of time that are equal to each other. They're about the same amount of effort, about the same amount of cost, maybe even a little bit less in terms of cost, maybe a little bit more in terms of time, but we want to be highly personalized and less broad-based because this is a relationship business. We really want to focus on that. We say, well, we just buy a mailing list and we'll send it out to as many people as possible, and we'll find the people who want to give to us. That's not quite as effective as really targeting a really special group of people who are already aligned with you, that you can have handwritten notes to, or write little sticky notes and stick it on top of the appeal, even if you don't want to customize the appeal itself. Active listening, obviously knowing about what people are excited about already and finding the gaps. They may have a couple of things they want to support, and you have a couple of things that you can fund. Trying to find out what's on both lists is really, really key. So when we're fundraising, when we're building relationships, we want to talk about how awesome our mission is, how awesome our program is, but it's just as important to listen and hear about what their priorities are. And our job is to find out kind of what aligns. They'll kind of seek and they're trying to see if it aligns, but it's our job to say, hey, actually, we have a program that might be perfect for that thing that you're describing. If we can, invitation to events, we try to use events as much as we can as not fundraising tools, as not revenue generation tools. I know that's not kosher for some people, but we love stewardship and cultivation events and meet people events. Some people call this friend raising, or they use the term friend raising to justify spending 3 months on a fundraising event when they're like, oh, we're going to raise $200,000 in one night. It's like, well, actually we took 3 months of staff time. So if we factor that in, that takes a huge chunk out of that. And we're spent all this money on materials and all the invitations and et cetera, et cetera. But we want to have smaller events that are a little more intimate, that we can have a little bit more relationship building. We do these kind of one-off all the time, where we'll have a specific donor invite a handful of folks to their home sometimes and just say, hey, we're not going to ask you for money tonight. We might at some point, but we want you to hear about this mission that we're doing. It's going to be a really, really special thing. Come by. We're going to have the ED or the head fundraiser or whomever just kind of talk a little bit. And then if it's appropriate, we can schedule follow-up meetings if anyone is interested. Very, very soft ask, very transparent, a lot more connecting, a lot more intimate than kind of a mass big fundraising quote unquote event. As much as you can offer opportunities to visit your organization, learn about your projects, the more powerful it can be. For a lot of our clients, we really will push some kind of invitation to tour whatever facilities we have. Now, we might be in a situation where we don't have tours to give. There's HIPAA violations, or we don't have physical space that shows well. But if you have a campus, or if you have something that you can show people, inviting for a tour is a great cultivation soft ask. You're like, oh, this could be a big donor. We took him out to lunch to meet him for the first time. It didn't feel appropriate to ask for a gift. It didn't feel appropriate to even ask for a follow-up meeting. But I could say, hey, you want to come by for a tour? I'd love to show you around. We're not going to ask for money. Again, we might at some point, but we want to make sure this aligns with what you're doing. If you want to come by and take a look at what we're doing, to visit your organization in person and just learn about it and see is a really powerful touch point. Great relationship building tool. We definitely want to utilize that. And then the last is just to keep in mind, the goal is to foster trust through just these meaningful interactions. Again, talking about AI, everything can feel so impersonal these days that if we take our list of constituents and thousands of donors and we whittle it down to really the ones that we want to bring along with us, alongside us in our mission, and then focus on building meaningful relationships with those people, again, that will result in both more quantity and more quality of contributions, bigger gifts from more people. It feels kind of counterintuitive to kind of narrow our list and say, oh, we're not going to market to 2,000, we're going to market to 100, but we're going to do a great job of marketing to those 100, because it's not even, we're going to go past marketing. We're going to go into that one-on-one relationship building that we can, because we know that's a better way to do it. We don't just want a one-time gift. It's not like, oh, we're trying to make a sale and then we're moving on to the next one. Again, we're trying to build our donor base. We're trying to build that volume of people who come back year after year. And not to say donor acquisition is not important. We want to try to expand that donor base, but to build a base, you can't just get someone one time. It's about creating a relationship with them, to the organization, so you don't have to do as much in the second ask or the third ask. You can just have them kind of walk alongside you. That's the most important. All right, final thing, next slide. Prioritize stewardship and recognition. I know this one's a little bit of an offshoot, because it's like, that doesn't sound like capturing new people, but the best way to increase the size of your donor base is to keep your existing donors giving to you. If your attrition rate is very, very high, and if you're anywhere near the national average, which is around 40 to 45%, which is not good, your attrition rate is going to be the main hurdle to building your base correctly, or building your base the right way. Yes, we want to capture new people. Yes, we want to do that in an optimized way, but just, if not more important, is to keep your existing donors with you by doing a great job of stewardship and recognition. So if you take nothing else away from today, I would say, first, what can you do about people who have given to you in the past and then stopped giving? Can we capture some of those? What are you doing about people who are first-time givers and you want them to give again or participate again? What are we doing in between our first ask and our second ask? Let's keep our attrition rate low, keep our people who are already knowing about us, already giving to us, make sure they stick around. And then we can put into effort into growing that base. But we got to keep the existing base. If it's atrophying as we go, it's going to be so hard to try to replace. You only have a finite number of people who exist in your community. You might have thousands or tens or hundreds of thousands of people who could donate, but it is finite. It doesn't go endlessly. So keeping your existing base is so critical. Recognizing and appreciating your contributions, obviously, public recognition, credibility for them, credibility for you, huge. And having a really robust stewardship program in place. It does express gratitude and make sure that they know that their gift is very, very important. More importantly, maybe it acknowledges their support publicly, which draws attention to your program. Sometimes you'll get other donors or other people participating just because they see their friends visibly being recognized for something, and show them how their generosity affects the community. Again, we talk about stories, we talk about impact statements, those things that Marty went over. The best way to do that is to just show them directly, hey, you gave X amount of dollars. As a result of that, we were able to do Y. And we want to tell you about it because it's really cool. We're really excited about this. And that's all they really want, is just information. We think, well, I don't know how to frame the thank you. How can I tell them how important the work is that they're doing and the work is that we're doing? The best way to do that is just to tell them the impact that they're having. You gave this as a result of you and some of the other donors. We were able to do this, and that's amazing. That's all we have to do. Just share that information on an ongoing basis. If you can, obviously encourage your loyal supporters, your people who give year after year, to invite others to join them. Your best ways to find people who are excited, who align with your mission already, all the things we talked about, is to have people who are already giving work on that outreach. It's why the volunteer model is so powerful and important. But you don't have to have someone serve as a consistent fundraising volunteer, especially if they've been a consistent donor, to sit them down and say, hey, really appreciate your contributions over the years. You've been so meaningful to us. Who else do you know who might get excited about what we're doing? So if you have a close relationship with the donor you already have, the next time you take them out to lunch to thank them, or you go to their house, or you see them at an event, just kind of broach that, saying, who else should we get involved with this? We're doing a nice job with our campaign, but we want to try to make X goal by February or whatever. Give them a reason, give them a finite deadline. But who do you know in your network that you could just connect us to, who might think this is also a pretty cool thing that we're doing? Great way to kind of softly get those extra connections, people you would never have access to normally. Good stewardship is donor retention and passion, for lack of a better word. It's people who are being very, very genuine. The best way to pretend to care about your donors is to actually care about your donors. And we want to be able to retain those donors on an ongoing basis. These people tend to be the best ambassadors for your cause. You want the buzz in the community to be very, very positive. Best way to do that is to share that information constantly. And it kind of has this organic expansion to it. So this will kind of grow your base on its own, but even more importantly, it keeps your existing donors sticking around so that your numbers aren't falling off as you're adding new people. And then as you do add new people, it's just growing from there. So quick review. Next slide. Here are the 4 ways that we really, really want to emphasize, and then we're going to open it up for discussion. Demonstrate impact. We want to talk about how your gift was great, what it did specifically, how we spent it, and then the new thing that we were able to do as a result of it. Very transparent. It keeps us accountable. The second thing is to work on the way that you diversify your fundraising network and your fundraising channels. You want to go through your volunteers. You want to go through your board. You want to go through your personal relationships. You want to attend events. You want to have a little bit of presence online. You want to do an e-newsletter. All these different channels that work are going to capture different demographics. We don't have to do all of them perfectly, but we need to do most of them kind of okay, at least. Have some kind of diversity in the way that you share information and that you connect with people. The third is really focusing on people and relationship building. Again, smaller number of people, more intimate, more close connections as opposed to a larger number of people and less personalization. And last thing is don't forget about keeping your existing donors very engaged and very happy. Because if there's one thing you can do to make sure that your base will always grow, it's making sure that it's not shrinking at the same time. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Marty to chat a little bit with some of y'all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jake. Okay. So I know that I have been warming you up that we have some discussion questions. Really, really want to get you all talking and sharing with each other. I'll pose these questions as we move forward, but feel free to offer other perspectives or questions back to us, as well as we talk about expanding our donor base. The first question I have is, how have you all worked to refine your donor segmentation strategies to better identify and engage potential donors who are going to be most aligned with your organization's mission and values, right? We don't necessarily want to just throw a ton of spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks all the time. We want to be a little more focused. So anyone have some good experience with donor segmentation that really helped them find the people who might be most aligned with their strategy, with their mission and values to get engaged? Don't be shy.
I'll answer first.
Thank you,
Cindy. I'll answer. I know in preparation, because we're in the middle of a silent phase, we like personally, I have had our Razor's Edge database specialist to kind of give me their top 25 donors, and then breaking it down by the highest giver down to a certain is it 2,500, 5,000, whatever, it depends on your organization. And it just kind of gives me a really good snapshot. When was their first gift? Are they giving every year? And then that way, kind of, if they're giving every year, even if it's not at the highest amount, but somebody's given a large amount, but it was 5 years ago, those annual donors are way more engaged than the one who gave an amount 5 years ago. So it just kind of helps us prioritize where we need to spend our most energy to start with.
I love it. Yeah. Utilizing, you've got lots of data, and it's important to utilize the data that you have for sure. Thank you for sharing, Cindy. Does anyone else want to weigh in on that question? Or perhaps anyone who's leveraged some digital platforms and technology to reach that broader audience, a more diverse audience, while still maintaining those personal connections? It's definitely, so who's doing social media in a way that's not a time suck, but is connecting them with more people? Anyone have some good social media experience that they want to share? Jake,
Hey,
I
Marty?
bet you. Yes. Hey, thank you.
I don't have anything to share on that, but I do have a question.
Perfect. Yes, Ken. Thank you.
We're working on our appeal here right now, and we have a donor base of about 12,000. We're fixing to purchase a list of non-donors that have incomes of, I think, over $100,000 or $125,000 household incomes over those income thresholds.
Yeah.
And the main purpose, obviously, is new donor acquisition, because these will be a purchase list, and we plan to track that pretty closely. We're tying this thing into what's it called? The National Day of Giving, or whatever it is, in November. And
Tuesday?
I don't know, anybody had any experience with that? I mean, we're trying something a little bit different. Last year, I think I don't even know that we did an appeal last year, and the year before we probably did it in the early part of the new year, not at the year end. Any thoughts? I mean, I don't know. Well, I've done this purchase list business before, and frankly, it hasn't produced much in the way of donation results. But we're launching a new comprehensive breast center for women, and our hospital serves the 6 counties around us, and this is a great way to get some information out to those communities that are, not in tight with us, and still use us, but think the benefit for us on this thing is really communicating that project to these folks so that they, the light bulb goes off, maybe for this one, but maybe, a year from now or whenever.
Yeah, no, I think that absolutely utilizing a purchase list can be a very effective tool to help educate the community. You don't always know right away any sort of connection back if you're not receiving gifts. So you sort of have that education piece. You also have, what do you do with the gifts that you receive? How do you engage and connect with those people and thank them and sort of bring them along into your family fold? And then you've got the whole Giving Tuesday thing. So I know you kind of put a lot of things out there. Does anyone care to engage in discussion? Jake?
Yeah, we have a couple different clients who are doing this year, and they have a couple of strategies on top of that strategy that I thought were really effective, and we're going to give a shot because we've had some success in the past. The first is to do a smaller matching gift push inside of the push. Something in the effect of the title of the piece says, between now and December 15th, your gift is doubled. Help us, and then insert the thing that you're trying to do, open our new breast center or whatever it might be. But have a very specific thing and say, the top of the thing, we got a donor who's going to give up to $100,000. But they want to do it as a matching gift. So if you can get us a donation before December 15th and remember us in your giving, every dollar you give is $2 or something like that. Just gives them it's the same psychology in Labor Day sale ends Tuesday, purchase now, come by, it just creates a sense of urgency. So that's something that's really, really effective. The second thing we're seeing a lot of this year, with a whole combination of factors of demographics and just the way the economy is education pieces on IRA rollovers integrated within our end of year appeals. So we're saying, hey, if you're on a fixed income, here's how you can maximize your taxes. Less money for the government, more money in your community. Here's a new program that we're offering. Now, it may be new or may not be new to you, but we have a specific targeted mailing, and you can even segment that by age and say, hey, we want households with people over 60 or over 65, pick an amount of people that's going to be appropriate in that range, and just have some of that included. And we have some examples that we can send you if you need. But a couple of our clients are doing that just to say, these are the age of our donors, our best donors anyways. We know that their income is over this. We know they're taking RMDs or required minimum distributions from Summit retirement account, their IRA rollover. They can maximize things by moving things around. And we're just going to give them some really easy and specific strategies to help them retain as much wealth as possible. So it's offered as a strategy, it's offered as a service, but it allows them to give in a different way that they maybe not have thought about. And then that's kind of tied into the appeal. So you don't have to do one or either of those things, but we're just trying to give one additional reason for these cold outreaches where you don't necessarily know these people, they don't necessarily know you. So they might need one more excuse to decide to jump in with you in that case.
Any other comments, questions surrounding that? Thank you for bringing that up, Ken. Just another question, number 3 here. What has anyone learned by listening to your donors and prospects that maybe helped you more intentionally connect with more of the right people for your cause, that helped expand your donor base? I think a lot of times we have great ideas and we're putting things out there, but has anyone done a sort of hey, we're at a point where we really are, we're going through our campaign and we've talked to all of our low hanging fruit. We need to sort of hit that reset button and go to that broader reach, and I'm going to go ask my current supporters, I'm going to ask some people for advice, and gotten some really great feedback that sort of helped you more intentionally move forward in that new donor expansion. Any comments on that? Really keying into listening to our people, getting good feedback, and utilizing that. Emily.
I can go.
Thank you.
I feel like we're always asking our board members, because, you know, they're our donors, they're our biggest advocates, like, give us names, like people who might be connected to the cause. And it's always just this like vague question out there, and then they never really get back to us. And at our last board meeting, we handed out pieces of paper and said, write down like connections. You don't need to know their personal information, just like anything you know about them and that they might be connected to our cause or have capacity to give. And then we took, like, people responded. They just wrote down names. We took them back. We did the donor research, and then we took it back to them and said, hey, how well do you know these people? Would you be willing to connect and set up a meeting? Or would you be willing at least to like personalize a letter for them at year end? And we've sent some of those letters already, and we're seeing pretty good returns. So, you know, we asked, and they, I think, kind of putting it right there and saying, do it now. It worked.
Love that. Like, very tangible. Here, fill this out before you leave. If you have to do this, not just like, oh, they weren't talking to me. It's kind of like doing a group ask, right? Like, people are like, oh, well, they're talking to everybody else. Very, very effective strategy. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Emily. I like that.
Yeah.
Lisa.
Hey, I think two things that that are important to consider is if you can get folks in a room and have a brainstorming session, that I have found when they communicate and start talking, then suddenly names start popping up. So that's, you know, if you can get them to do that, that's very important. And then also just kind of making sure that they're comfortable doing what you ask. So they're being respectful of their comfort level. So, you know, you always get the person that's like, I'm not asking, but I'll invite them in. So, because that's, you know, a great way to scare them away.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well said.
Very well said. Thank you. Fabulous. Y'all have some great ideas. Thank you. We've got a couple more discussion questions. How can we enhance our storytelling and impact communications to make our fundraising efforts more compelling, ensuring that donors understand the real world outcomes of their contributions? I know this is a constant struggle, right? Like, let's come up with a good story. How are we going to connect? I know that people relate in story, but we have a hard time gathering story. Or guess what? I don't think this person can convey the story as well. Anybody really focused on stories sort of this last year that has something that they could share that was helpful to convey that impact, inspire giving, connect with new people in a really meaningful way? Only because I want to call on her, Wonder Woman. Do you have anything to share? You all have some amazing stories. Anything you could help weigh in on this, Katie Tate?
Hi. I should have changed my name on my thing. Yeah, we have so many stories, and it's just interesting, you know, when you are storytelling, what people are attracted to, right? Some, of course, some people, depending on what their interests are, can be more impacted by a story than not. So I guess for an appeal, for an example, we always do like a Mother's Day appeal. And a couple of years ago, a team member shared a story about her mother, and they'd actually received an award for it, and it had brought in, it was probably one of our most successful appeals. And it was really just about a tradition that they had on Mother's Day, that they would watch this movie, and how she promised her father she would take care of her mother. And then recently we just did an appeal about a female veteran who had passed with us at our care center. And I just thought it was this wonderful story. And of course it was, but not as successful, you know, so it really is just interesting when you take the time to look back on those things, then it can really help you decide what stories are really impactful for your specific donor base.
Oh, go ahead, Cindy. Yes, thank you.
I want to add too, and I'm sure Wonder Woman, Katie changed.
Yeah, I changed it. I had to do it. Sorry.
That's funny. But one thing that ended up, and this is a success story we had, we do bucket lists because we're in the hospice business, and we do have bucket lists for our patients. And they might be something little and it might be big, but we had a patient a few weeks ago that she's in her 30s and she wanted to parachute. She wanted to jump out of a plane. And her social worker made that happen for her, and her social worker jumped as well. We received $1,000 donation that was aired on the television about that making her wish come true. And we took care of his wife probably a couple years ago. Katie would remember because I think he was a donor before I joined the agency. And he was like, this is the kind of thing that is so important, and I like to see you doing this work. So it was storytelling, but kind of in a snapshot, but it still was. And it resulted in, in a gift and another gift. And he's already a large donor. So.
Thank you for sharing all of those. I mean, I got just from the little Mother's Day, and you didn't even go into depth, like really seeing someone jump out of a plane. Those are the kinds of things, y'all, the power of one person and something that we can relate to that really truly can like help inspire a new person to pay attention. And you're like, that's only one little snapshot, one little piece of what we're doing in it. But guess what? It brings them into your family. And I think that is the key here, right? It's coming at things from different angles. And then now they're a part of your family, and now they can be educated and informed and all the other great things that you want to share with them. But amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those. Last question, just to probe some additional conversation. Share with us some of the activities that you've tried to cultivate and maintain those lasting relationships with donors, encouraging them to be those loyal supporters and also advocates for your cause, right? Because I think that we do find that that's our best way to get other people engaged, is for them to passionately share with others and be that advocate out there, right? That is how they're retained, and they're also word of mouth referring other people to talk to you. Any specific activities that anyone could share? This is very broad, but just in closing, last kind of thoughts on those relationship building things that have been really meaningful and fruitful.
I mean, I think it is just the basic phone call can go a long way. And as long as just that, continuing to do that, obviously don't call them too often, but touching base every so often. I think, especially our demographic of donors are older, I'd say, and they just appreciate a phone call or a handwritten thank you note. Cindy's so good about doing that.
Yeah. I challenge each of you. There's probably a donor that just pops into your mind right now that you're like, I just haven't talked to them in a while, and they have always been such an advocate for us. Call them today. Drop a note in the mail to them today. Just one. And then tomorrow do the same thing. Just when people kind of are on your mind, yes, we can be focused and strategize, intentionality of like scheduling touch points with people, but sometimes there's nothing like, I was just thinking of you. How are you? You're a real person that I know and have a relationship with, and I thought of you and I called you. So I think it's a fabulous way to close. Anyone have any final comments or questions for the good of the order? Well, thank you all for your willingness to participate today. We really, really appreciate it. It was fun to hear from so many of you, and we really want to be trying to do more of this on our forums moving forward, is hearing from you. Bring your challenges, bring your successes, and share with others, because I know that's the best way that we also can learn from each other. So